Hey ladies, so today we're going to be talking about Hagar, which is one of the wives of Abraham. And it's so cool to me to be able to look at all of these different women of the Bible, these different stories of the Bible, and just really get to learn who God is and how he came to them and helped them in their times of need. And it's so encouraging because that's the same God that took care of Hagar in the wilderness is here to take care of us. So I'm really excited, and this is kind of what I've learned about Hagar through this study. So her life was not easy. It was very difficult. From the very beginning, she was a woman who was a slave from Egypt, and she was probably given to Abraham as a gift whenever he was in Egypt visiting Pharaoh. And then soon after that, she was given to Sarah to be her servant, and she was a servant for Sarah. And we all know the story about Sarah and how she was trying to have a baby. Well, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands and rush God's plan. And that was when Sarah decided to give Hagar back to Abraham so that she could have a baby through Hagar. So I am sure that her life was full of anger and bitterness and loneliness and resentment because, being a woman in that age and, she's a slave, she was lower than other people. But God was still with her, and that was what was so incredible about it. She became pregnant, and after she pregnant, her life honestly just became a living hell with Sarah. And Sarah, got rid of her, and she ran away, or she treated her so poorly that she ran away, and she was alone in the wilderness. And God came to her as the angel of the Lord, and he came and he said, Hagar, where have you come from and where are you going? I think that it's important to pay attention to that phrase because it is important to know about your past and to what God has brought you out of. But it's also important to know that you have a future and that God will bring you into a new future, even if you feel like you don't know what your future is. God does. He knows. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you a hope and a future. It was at that moment that he gave a promise to Hagar, and he said, return back to your mistress Sarah and submit to her authority. So he gave her a plan. He gave her something to do, and she had a plan. So she went back, and he promised her, I will give you more descendants than you can count. And that's an encouraging promise because even Sarah, up until that point, hadn't been told specifically that she was going to have the descendants. It wasn't until the very end, right before she got pregnant, that she was told. So that is something, to hold on to. That was a promise that God gave her. It was in that moment that she said that God told her that he was going to have a son and she would name him Ishmael, for God hears. And I think that's important to remember, is that God hears you. When he asked her, where have you come from and where are you going? And she didn't know, but she told God what was going on in her life. She told him her fears, her anxieties, her concerns, her pain, and he heard her. Later on, she was the one who described God as, you are the one who sees me. God sees you. He sees your heart. He sees your pain. He sees your brokenness. He sees your hurt. And it's important to know that he has a plan for you, a plan to give you a hope and a future. Later on in the story, after she had Ishmael and then Sarah became pregnant, things again got rough for Hagar, and at this point she was told to leave completely, and so she did, and she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness. How many times of our life where we lose our purpose, where we lose our plan, where we lose sight of God, and we're just wandering aimlessly. We have no direction, no point. We don't know which way to go. It was at that moment that she was alone. She went away from her son and she was crying. She was distraught. But God came to her again, and he said, "Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go to him, comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants." Again, God reminded Hagar of the promise that he made her all those years ago. He reminded her of the future that she has through this boy. Then God opened her eyes and she saw a well full of water. She quickly filled her container and she gave the boy a drink. I think this is just a little snippet of what's in my mind. That's very important to remember, is that she filled her container and then she gave the boy a drink. It's important to note that in order for us to be in God's plan, to know his plan, that we have to be filled with him. We have to have his plan inside of us, his hope, or we have to understand that he has a plan for us and we have to be ready for it before we can know what's going on. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness, and he became a skillful archer. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother arranged for him to marry a woman from the land of Egypt. So even though her story was full of heartache and trial and stress and anger and bitterness, God was with her through it all. It didn't help the situation. Her situation was still difficult, and it was still trying, but God was with her throughout the whole thing. He was there, and he revealed himself to her in a way that no other woman had at that point. And I just think that is so cool, that Hagar is the woman who first saw God and had a first real encounter with God. And not only had it happened once, but it happened twice. Anyway, so that's what I have for you, and I just pray that you guys have a wonderful week, and that you remember that even though you may be going through the most difficult time of your life, whatever's going on, that God hears you and God sees you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.